Well, good. Well, then let's call our meeting to order this evening. This is the December 14th meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission, and I'd like to call this to order. We typically start with a roll call.
Certainly, Member Church.
Here.
Member Liebolt is absent. Member McGuire.
Here.
Member Minor.
Here.
Member Nickel.
Here.
Chair Bergman.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great. Next item would be to consider the minutes of November 9th from the regular meeting. Has everybody had a chance to take a look at them? Any changes we want to offer up? Can I get a motion?
I move that we accept the
Okay.
meeting notes. I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye, okay, they're accepted. We have consideration of the November 16th special meeting minutes of the joint workshop with the PCBZA, ZBA, and I'll entertain a motion if somebody's ready.
I move that we accept the minutes of the special meeting. And I will second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Great, we have accepted the minutes. Then we always allow a few moments for non-agenda items and visitors. And so if there's any visitors, do you have anything to offer that's not on the agenda for this evening? Seeing none, we'll move off of that. Before we get started with the business of the day, I'd like to welcome our new member, Jeff McGuire. So congratulations.
Thank you.
On joining our august group. I know we're all pleased to see you here. One of the things that I do with all of our new members is I give them a copy of the Virginia Lee and Lee McAllister Field Guide to American Homes. These are used books that I get at the book sale, so it's not a big investment, but here it is. This will give you it's a little encyclopedia of architectural styles. And actually, I flagged the two residential houses that we have on our agenda this evening, so they're flagged for you. So I wanted to welcome you.
Thank you.
So from there, we're going to move on to our landmark nomination for 24 East Scranton Avenue. And this is going to be a public hearing. So anybody who wishes to speak tonight about that, I would like them to stand and we will swear them in. And so if both of you are swearing just one of you, okay. So Rob, raising your right hand, do you swear to give honest testimony and do your best in presenting this property to us?
Yes.
Good, thank you. Close enough? Okay. And with that, Rob, can I ask you to give us a little presentation about the property?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yes, if you will.
As I say, I think some of you will recognize Mr. Eric Mueller, the village's administrative intern, who prepared the staff memorandum on this item and who I've asked to tee up Mr. Douglas's presentation.
Yeah, hi, how's it going?
Great.
So this is the historic landmark for 24 East Scranton Avenue, also known as the Village Market. It is the oldest commercial building in the Central Business District and one of the oldest within the village. It is on the National Register of Historic Places, and according to the application, was the first brick building built in the area. With this landmark decision, the commission has 4 options in front of it. The first is a continuation where you all can move to continue this hearing to the next regular meeting. You can approve the landmark as is. You can approve the landmark with modifications, or you can deny 24 East Scranton for landmark.
Great. Okay. And can someone give us just a little rundown, just a little history of the building and how long it's been there and whatnot?
Well, my name is Rob Douglas, local architect and resident. This building, actually, we bought this 2005, And at that point, it was a completely white building, whitewashed. All the Chicago Common brick was whitewashed. And then the rear portion of the building was CMU block and had an outside staircase on the Walnut Avenue side. It had a very different character from what we ultimately ended up doing here. And as stated, it is the oldest commercial building in town, and honestly, I sort of feel like this is overdue, getting this done, because it's really a centerpiece to the downtown. And maybe we just go through these slides real quick. I got some historical photos here of the building. Well, the Plata survey, not really legible, so let's not worry about that. If we can move to the next one, please. This was the original Village Market wood frame structure, and it burned down somewhere in the late 1800s, but it was originally a wood frame building. And the next slide, please, would go to the circa 1900 building for the Village Market. And just to put it in context, some of these buildings off to the side here, the post office is right here. This was probably pretty close to the location that Griffin, Grath, and Lackey's house was as a realtor in later years. But you can see it doesn't have the back half built. That was done probably in the 1950s. But you can see the slide here, that's bringing ice blocks in for the refrigeration in the Village Market. Next slide, please. And of course, I know everybody knows about the butcher. The Ghost Walk has always honored his history here, even though, watch out for your dogs. But yeah, this is Mr. Helms out in front of the storefront. And actually, this photograph here was really used toward the restoration of the front elevation. Because when we acquired the building, it was basically aluminum framed storefront that was probably done in the 1950s when the back portion was added. Next slide, please. And then I got a series of images here from this is probably post-World War II, based on the age of the car there. But it had always been a grocery store. And that's just a little historic. You can see actually with the storefront here, it's not what Mr. Helms had. It was been modified at that point, and we took it back to the original character. Next slide. And then during the 1960s, it was known as Bill's. And he operated it really up through the 1960s. I don't want to show my age, but I do remember coming up here as a kid from Lake Forest because we could always buy beer there. And,
Beer and cigarettes?
but, you know,
Okay.
I guess there's a little confessional there with that. But Bill's was really, it was really quite a unique place. And you can see they're getting ready here to go for a vacation somewhere with their camper on the back of their pickup truck.
Well, just to interrupt you for a second, the girl leaning up against the fender is Suzanne Hansen, who was in my high school class. So I know Suzanne and Danny, who are in the
Okay.
photograph. So I'm showing my age too.
Yeah, well, but it has a long history. So if we can just move on to the next slide. This is another photograph of the building. And as you can see here, it's been whitewashed. And that red brick on the front of the building was actually manufactured here in Lake Bluff. And we had to chemically remove the paint so we wouldn't damage it, but revealing that red brick was really kind of a nice find. I might mention too, on the west side of the building, as we're taking the paint off of the Chicago Common brick, found a mural it was not really intact, but it was a Dad's Root Beer mural that was on the side of the building. So that's now covered up by, well, it was removed when we took the paint off, and then, of course, the Village Commons building next door appeared in 2008. Next image, please. And then that's the completion of the restoration of the building, which was completed in 2008, and brought the building up to, full code compliance. I didn't think I should share the images of what it was like before we went in there, but I can tell you that basement was pretty creepy. There was an old walk-in cooler, and it was a water-chilled cooler. So when you went down to the basement, you just hear this dripping water all the time, and it was, your imagination would take off. I always thought
Easily.
if any kids in town were misbehaving, we just could put them in the basement and they would straighten up quick. But it came a long ways from what it was when we bought it from Augie. And so next image, I don't remember what's after this. Yes, just current photographs of the building with obviously the Village Commons next door. And then on the back portion, that concrete block, we covered it up with a stucco veneer and really made it look like two buildings with a party wall. I think the next image is just more from the southeast corner, looking back at the building. So that's the Village Market building, and we just really feel it's something that we should have done this a long time ago, as far as having it memorialized in the context of landmark status. And beyond that, if I can answer any questions you might have, I'll more than happy to do my best.
Great. Do you have any remodeling plans for the building? I mean, once it's landmarked?
No, not at this point. No, I really just feel like it's just a building that needs that recognition. But no, there's no plans at all with the building itself. It's time. This should be done. So.
Well, great. Well,
I do have-
thank you.
I do have one question. With the original front doorway that had the I don't know, what do you call that, the twist detailing on the posts, was that one of those iron storefronts that just that were very popular in that era, that just kind of got put on the front of things?
Correct. Actually, no, they're structural. They were cast iron columns with that, well, I guess
It's like
from an architectural standpoint, that'd be more like a Solomonic type column, but it's got a twist to it, as if in sort of a candy cane form. But that was original to the storefront.
Oh, that was the original one?
Correct.
So
That was
you found it underneath all
it was
those.
covered up from the remodels that had happened prior to that. So, and with the 1900 photograph, we then tried to restore the storefront from that photograph. So, now this side here, we took liberties, because the building was one very long, narrow building on the inside, almost like a bowling alley, and we just didn't see that being practical from a leasing standpoint, so we created this second entry point for the back portion of the building. So.
Is that back stairway, does that go to the second floor?
Correct. That's the second means of egress off the second floor.
I have a question, Chairman. So the front half of the building is part of the National Register.
Well, I believe the Central Business District got that designation. I'm not sure this building was identified individually. I'm not quite sure about that, but I know the district was put into the National Register.
So when the building is identified in the National Register, the entire building goes in.
Okay.
And so pardon me, I can't quite remember when the National Register application was filed, whether it was
saw it
before
was
or after your addition.
2006, maybe?
Yeah, so that would have been after
Yeah, September.
we did the restoration to
So
the building.
you did the restoration, and then then the village did the.
Yeah, the village did the whole
national-
central business district.
So then, that would mean that the entire building is in the National Register
So the
District.
front half and the back half.
Front and back.
Yeah, well-
That typically goes by lot lines.
Okay.
So anything that's within the lot line then is considered a landmarked building.
And then I think what Glenn has just brought up there, oh, well, I guess we moved off of it, was the criteria for designation. And,
Getting a little bit ahead of myself.
okay, that's okay. I wasn't sure if you wanted to jump into that now,
I was
so.
trying to show that lot line
Okay.
exhibit Chair Bergman was referencing.
Right. And that includes the train station, it includes
Village Hall?
the park, then this building, oh, here we go, here's the National Register District.
Yeah.
And so those are the buildings that are in the district, and you're right, the City Hall, the Village Hall is in there, and the
Brenton?
Bluffington's building is in there.
Which, that Stanley Anderson building, I believe Lawrence, the Lawrence brothers actually had that, I think before anything else, had that designated under
They
the,
designated that building individually.
right,
Yeah.
right. And honestly, that building was actually an inspiration for, cornice lines for the Village Commons building, the larger building to the west. That Stanley Anderson building was really great, reference to, enhancing the context of the neighborhood or the central business district.
It's part of a earlier plan to have those sight lines stretch from the Griffith building all the way down to the train station to form a central whole. And we can have architectural conversations about that aren't necessarily germane to this evening, but that's all part of making the central business district to have that cohesiveness. Yeah. So, okay. Do we have other questions? Any other thoughts? Any thing? From there, we would move into a general discussion. Do we have any thoughts on this? And is there anybody else in the audience that has any comments? Okay. Do we have anybody online, do we have anybody online that might have comments?
Yeah, you do have a couple people participating online. I think they're here for a different agenda item. If you can hear this, if you're online, you can ask to be recognized at any time. There's a raise your hand button there at the bottom of your screen and a Q&A button as well.
Okay. So we were, go ahead.
One more question, Chairman. The red brick, we know, you said it was manufactured in Lake Bluff.
That's what I remember.
Was it related to the clothes at all? They just did more of a yellow brick, right? Or
Well, I remember finding that bit of information through the Lake Bluff History Museum, and that was, yeah, I guess they had a manufacturing facility here in Lake Bluff making brick, and what's kind of nice about that brick too is it has a very thin mortar line up to it. Typically, it's today's standards is usually like 3/8 of an inch, and this one is maybe 1/4 inch. So it's very, and what it does is it creates a monolithic look to the building versus a more textured surface. So
beautiful, the facade.
Okay, all right. Great, Rob, Mr. Douglas, thank you.
okay.
Okay, discussion, any points people want to bring up?
No, I just think
What
it'd
would
be
we,
a wonderful.
what would we like to do with this?
Well, do we need to go through
View
all of
the
the?
metric or the measurements
Do we,
of,
do we want to landmark this building?
Yes. Yeah.
The general consensus is we want to do that? Okay. So in your package, in the ordinance that's been presented, there's been a mark-off of all of the items there that we would recommend that this be listed for the special reasons why we are landmarking the property. Okay? We can go through and just simply adopt that list, or if you'd like, we can go through the list on just on a general discussion basis. But there are general considerations and architectural significance items that are listed. And we can just go ahead and accept those if you'd like.
I think that, given that we have other things on the agenda,
Yeah.
it would, in interest of time, I
Great.
don't think any of us have any,
Okay?
I certainly don't have any doubts that any of these.
I went through the list and there wasn't anything that I disagreed with or.
Then can I ask someone to make a motion to landmark the property?
I move that we accept the application for landmark.
Second.
Okay. Glenn, do we have to have that motion in any particular form, or?
I think that form is acceptable. I'd just clarify that in this case, the HPC is a recommending body, so you're making a recommendation to the village
Okay.
board to designate
And
this.
we're recommending that we accept the ordinance as been proposed, right?
Right.
Okay. And can we have a roll call vote then?
Certainly. Member George,
Yes.
Member Minor,
Yes.
Member Nickel,
Yes.
Member McGuire,
Yes.
Chair Bergman.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Great. Wonderful.
Thank you
Mr.
so much.
Douglas, thank you.
For bringing that
Okay.
forward.
We look forward to enjoying.
you again.
Yes. Thank you very much. Okay, great. Moving on to the next item, we go to a demolition review for the property at 116 Ravine Avenue.
Certainly. Again, in this instance, I know the petitioners are online and are available to speak. And then I've, once again, the village's administrative intern, Eric Mueller, prepared this staff memorandum, and I've asked him to present this item.
Great. Mr. Mueller, what can you tell us about this?
Yeah, so for this next agenda item, it is a demolition review for 116 Ravine Avenue. This residence was built in 1965, and according to the village's survey records, has no special historic significance. Per the application, the property has been vacant for 5 years, and a majority of the major components have reached the end of their economic life. The plans that the applicant has is to demolish the building and construct a new home in its place.
Okay, good. The petitioner is online. Do they have any comments that they'd like to add?
Certainly. Ken and/or Lana, we should be able to hear you if you'd like to speak.
Hi, can you hear us?
We can hear you.
Okay, well, yeah, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you, but we'll do our best. So I'm Lana Sorensen.
I'm Ken Sorensen.
We're the proud new owners of 116 Ravine. As was just mentioned, our plan is would like to be to demolish the structure and build a new construction home, and I believe those plans were included in the packet. Just a quick little background on us. We're currently in Colorado. We apologize for not being able to attend this meeting. Our son is graduating tomorrow. Yes. So we obviously are going to be attending that ceremony. We raised our children in Libertyville for 20 plus years. We moved out of the area for 2 years and always said if we came back home, Lake Bluff would be the #1 place that we would want to live. And this opportunity came about, and we looked at the property and knew right away that it's something that we would like to move forward with. We recently took possession of it, and the architect that we worked with is very familiar with a lot of the with Lake Bluff and Lake Forest regulations. It's Jeff Letzer at Aspect Design, and the builder that we are working with that would be doing the construction has done many projects in Lake Bluff and Lake Forest. He's also a personal relative of mine. He's my brother, part of Landmark Luxury Group. Again, he's there. He was just there yesterday. So both people that we're working with these plans are very familiar with Lake Bluff and all of the rules and regulations. And as was mentioned, this property has been vacant for 5 years and is broken windows. I mean, it's just really in terrible condition, and we would love to have the opportunity to construct something beautiful that's a little bit more representative of the area and of Lake Bluff.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else who has any comments about the property? Okay, I suppose by way of disclaimer, I should note that staff has said that the house is built in '65. A good friend of mine lived in that house when I was a youngster. I think there's probably still some of my Army men in the crawl space. I can tell you that that house was there long before 1965, so the other date listed here, 1958, I think might be more accurate. Do we have any questions about the property? Did anybody go by and take a look at it? What are our thoughts?
Well, I had a question about, I don't know if you have made decisions about this yet, but it's I know there's a lot of brush, but there's also a lot of trees. Have you given any thought to how and if you'll be able to maintain some or a lot of the trees because it kind of, leading up to the park, it's just a very nicely treed area, and I was wondering if you'd be able to maintain those trees.
So we will follow the guidance that's provided to us. I know when we submit our plans, I believe the village will require us to have a tree inventory done, and we will have our architect and builder work with the village to make sure that whatever trees can be maintained will be maintained. We're obviously not experts in that field, so we will just follow the guidance of the experts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Are you aware that just immediately west of your property is the remains of the dam for Artesian Lake?
I'm glad you brought that up. Yes, I was just looking at some historical information on Lake Bluff, and I came across a video that a high schooler did for a project that kind of went through the whole overview of just the history of that, and so we are aware of that.
There's a great big pile of concrete just west of your property, and that's the old dam that was dynamited way back when. Okay. Any other comments about the property? Any other thoughts? Okay. What do we think about this property?
Well, I've not been in it, but I know it has been sitting empty for at least 5 years, and you can see the disrepair going on. I would guess it's the same inside, and probably is not real salvageable at this point. And I don't know, are we going to go through the list again to determine whether it has any architectural significance?
Well, I'm wondering at this point, do we see any architectural significance?
No.
Do we see anything that we want to take a close look at or try and research or look at?
No.
So, aside from the fact that I played Army down in the basement, played Army Reds.
That is
I have
If you find any, we'll know who to get it to.
You know, well, I will add this after we go through and vote. Well, I was just going to say, I know the woman whose parents, Kate's parents, built the home. And so I asked her, the parents who built the home, I asked her if there were any architectural drawings or pictures of how the home looked, and it's healthier times and what the property looked like when it was well-maintained. And so she was going to research and also share some stories about the property. So I didn't know if you would be interested in some of that, or in the museum might be interested in for the archives.
All
We
right,
can have a little bit of history of the home,
so,
even though it's not historically significant.
okay. What would we like to do with this property? Do we want to terminate this?
Well,
Do we want to take a
yes,
closer look at
that
it?
would be my inclination. I agree that there really doesn't seem to be much worth salvaging here, and certainly putting a newer home in that location would raise the property value significantly and add a little bit to the village coffers.
Oh,
That's-
okay.
So I don't see really much of a downside to doing it.
Any thoughts? Our newest member? any
No,
thoughts, Mr.
I agree. I mean,
McGuire?
it's been vacant for 5 years. It looks like it's overgrown and
Yeah, kind of sadly so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, can someone make a motion of what we think we should do with this? There's, on the back page here, we have a list of motions here, and we can follow the green stripe, which is the approval to terminate the review. We can continue this if we would like to look at this again next month, or we continue it further to see if we would like to take a further review of this property.
Chair, I would move to terminate the demolition review of 116 Ravine Avenue as a single-family residence, does not meet the criteria for designation.
Okay,
I second that.
we have a second, first and a second. Should we take a roll call vote or a voice vote?
And we can do a roll call.
Let's do the roll call vote then.
Yeah. Member Church,
Yes.
Member McGuire,
yes.
Member Nickel,
Yes.
Member Minor,
Yes.
Chair Bergman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So the Sorensens, you have your house now? I would add, I looked at the drawings for your new house. You will never have anybody living on the west side of your property, and it looks out into the public park. I would fill that whole side of the house with windows. You're gonna have a beautiful view in there. So, but that's your decision, and you and your architects get to look at that, so,
We'll take a look at that again.
yeah,
Good luck to you.
Thank you
great.
so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so then from there, we move on to our item 7, our continued demolition review of 1 Moffett.
Certainly. So, again, the architect on this project is here, and I know has some updated materials to share with you. As far as what was shared with you in the packet, the memorandum for this month and really your choices for this month are much the same as last month. You're partway through this demolition delay period. If you take no further action, this delay period would expire on January 4th. That's before your next meeting. So at that point, the applicant could apply for and receive a demolition permit. So really, your choices in total, the paths you can take are, you can end the review tonight. You can choose to continue the review, but understand that unless you call a special meeting, you won't have the chance potentially to talk about it again. Or by motion, you can either request the village board provide a 30-day extension, or direct us as staff to prepare a landmark nomination in the name of the commission. So those are your choices, again, really the same as last month. Since last month, we have received some additional public comment about this item. We've received some additional historic records from the offices of Stanley Anderson, as well as the History Museum. All those materials were included online, and for your convenience, for your reference, we gave you printed copies of those as well. So happy to answer any questions before the applicant comes forward.
Great, thank you.
I should mention also, forgive me, Member McGuire, of course, was just recently appointed. I know that he was present here at your last meeting, and that he toured the property as well yesterday.
Yesterday.
And of course, a video of that tour we took with the first set of tours about a month ago that's been available publicly online for about a month as well.
Great, okay. Glenn, thank you. So do we have any comments from the architect? I see thank you to the Aherns for being here this evening. Appreciate your presence. So,
And with Brian Bertola from my office and Ross Friedman, who's the construction manager and builder.
good. Thank you for being here.
So I'll just, well, let's see, Glenn, are you able to pull up the PDF that I gave you? Just, I'll quickly go back over a few high points from the November meeting. As you recall, the property, 1 Moffett Road is a 4.65 acre parcel on the lake, and then 0 Cambridge Lane is a 2.35 acre parcel just west of that, so left on the slide, and then the Aherns currently live just west of that. And the Conway Olmsted House, which is the house that we're considering tonight, was designed from 1936 to 1937 in a French eclectic style by New York architects Delano and Aldrich. And Delano and Aldrich are known for large country houses and institutional projects. And Stanley Anderson is also connected to the project as the local architect. So that's some of the kind of configuration and history. The reasons we presented last month for the demolition request are primarily multiple alterations and additions to the inside and outside of the home have occurred since the original construction in the late 1930s. The current structure has been altered to such a degree that the home lacks historic design integrity and exterior composition, I would say with the exception of the part of the entry court elevation, and in most of the interior spaces. Also, a reason for demolition is just the scale of the home at 14,000 square feet, 9 bedrooms, 14 bathrooms. It's a kind of overwhelming structure to think of as a home. Importantly for the Aherns, the home does not really engage the property, the lake, or the views in the way that they would like to, or as an architect, very effectively, I would say. The energy efficiency of the home is poor, given the size and thermal qualities of the construction from 90 years ago. And then finally, renovation and rehabilitation of the home would cost more than building a new home and still result in a home that is too large, expensive to operate, poorly sited on Lake Michigan waterfront, and not really appealing to most buyers given how long it sat on the market when it came up for sale. So the benefits that I'd like to have you consider for the Aherns proposed project is first that the Aherns are 30-year residents of Lake Bluff, and they'd like to build a lifetime single-family home on restored property. And that's kind of versus a developer option of maximizing the opportunity by subdividing the 7-acre parcel into multiple lots. So I think that's, at a starting point, a really huge benefit for the community. Secondly, the proposed recycling of all home components versus demolition and trucking off to a landfill, and the hope to reuse many existing home components if possible. The great room, the library interior, brick, slate, stone, windows, doors, fixtures, and hardware, as much as we can. We don't know if any or all of those are a certain thing at this point, but that's the hope. Environmental consciousness in the architecture, both the smaller scale footprint, investing in low energy products and sustainable design features are a focus of the Aherns. In addition, the landscape design by Craig Bergman of native natural landscape and capturing natural resources and is another focus. So both the landscape and the home will be very environmentally conscious. 0 Moffett will undergo some type of a plat of re-subdivision so that it won't be built on. in the future, and there's strong interest in putting it into actual conservation. And the Aherns are working through that with local land use attorney now, but that's the direction they'd like to go in. Other benefits are a willingness to, over time, conduct bluff and beach restoration. And AECom is doing completing a second phase of a report on how to do that over time. Cleaning up the ravine from lack of maintenance. Removal of structures beyond repair, like the tennis courts, fencing, shed buildings, things that are separate from the house. And we now have a tree survey by an arborist, and so we're going through a tree analysis to save healthy trees and just kind of improve the health of trees on the property. So updates since our last meeting are few. Glenn, you could go through, actually, this is a topo survey that's been completed and the tree survey, so that's completed. And if you keep going, you can keep going kind of all the way actually to the end. These are from the last presentation, just to kind of jog your memory. And next one more. So this is a slightly revised site plan of proposed new work, where we were able to bring a little bit more definition to the house plan. The gray area of the house is second floor, and the darker footprint is below that. But I wanted to point out there are a few signature trees that now we know from the tree survey that we're able to kind of position the house relative to those. One is right at the bluff, the white circle, and then one is left of the turnaround circle. So the strategy of the home is, driveway is to come in and turn in on 0 Moffett and wind your way back in front of the house to the turnaround, and the house sits at an angle to the bluff to kind of capture those oblique views out to the lake. So that's, the design is moving forward, but we were glad to see that some of the really beautiful trees are working well with the house siting. And then the only other change for me, there were no historical changes or other items that changed for me. I did read all of the letters. There was one from November and 9 for 9 new ones. And the sentiments expressed there they were all very consistent and very understandable, lamenting the loss of history and the loss of visible representations of a bygone era. There was frustration with kind of a disposable culture and similar losses along the North Shore. Personal experiences were recounted. Those were actually helpful for us in many ways. And just a sense of waste and a sense of loss of beauty. So as architects and for the Aherns as community members, we very much understand all of those sentiments. We feel those sentiments too. I think the issue is the solution presented in the letters was that someone should buy the house and restore it. And that person has not emerged, and it's very hard to find that person, not just for this house, but for houses like it along the North Shore, and that is a loss. But it's also a reality. So the choices then become the Aherns with a vision that I think is wonderful for the property and the community. And the second option is a developer who would, and that's who was looking at it. It's the Aherns and developers, essentially. And they would try to create multiple lots out of the 7 acres, because that's what they need to do to make it work. And so we feel like the option presented here is the preferred option for all those reasons. And it's helpful for us to execute that vision with more time. And what we're really here today about is time before we can demolish the existing building. And so we would ask you to terminate review at this point to kind of grant us that time to execute the parts of the project we'd really like to achieve. And thank you for your time. And I know it's all personal time, except for you, Glenn. So I appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Would the Aherns like to say anything, or anybody else? Okay. And do we have anybody still online? We always have to. We're getting further and further away from Zoom meetings, but we still have to keep in touch with that. So.
No one looking to speak, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. Have your design plans progressed at all? Have you done anything with regards to your design thoughts?
So only to the degree we're showing here, which is kind of a sequence of garage to the south, moving through public spaces kind of below the second floor level, along the lake, and then a bedroom, main bedroom to the north, and children and guest bedrooms above. Screen porch kind of coming out to, and family room kind of coming out towards the south and towards the lake. And we presented floor plans for the first time at 1:30 this afternoon, so we don't have any feedback that we can share completely, but we're progressing in that way.
Okay. Are you still planning on doing some sort of pavilion with the great room? Still thinking about moving that?
It's still in the thought process. I would say there have been some obstacles that have come up with it, both practical and also visually. I think we took your comment last time, actually. I was, okay, well, so how would we do that? And what would it work? How would it work aesthetically? And went back to the interior, went back and looked around. And so I think it's still very much a possibility. The Aherns restored a barn on their property, which they just love as an accessory building, and want something like that. I don't want, I'm being really careful not to feel like we're committing completely in case it somehow doesn't happen.
I'm not asking you to.
Yeah.
So, okay.
But it's still very much in the works, and certainly recycling of the entire building is a priority. That is one of the things that becomes very kind of linear. It's 3 to 6 months to do that, and so that pushes everything out.
Where would that be on this, if you did that?
The
dark?
Yeah.
Okay,
By
got
the 3 trees there, that's the actual footprint of the great
Okay,
room.
thanks.
Yeah. It's about 1,300 square feet, I think.
What's the grid pattern just beyond that?
Vegetable gardens,
Vegetable gardens?
raised planters, yeah.
Okay, and then what's the green box over by the
Yeah,
driveway?
off the
That's
circular drive.
the
Pickleball?
rectangle, pickle.
I'm sorry?
Pickleball
Pickleball.
court with a really, really great view.
Yeah, I guess so. Nobody's gonna keep their eye on the ball.
They're gonna
right?
forget to touch them all.
Okay.
That's right.
Now, would that have like a little clubhouse, a little warming area, a little,
We haven't designed that in yet, and there's also still talk of a lap pool or potentially. It may be that there's gardens that are first generation of some of these elements. We're really kind of waiting for Craig Bergman's team to collaborate with us before getting too far with it.
he'll be full of ideas. I know Craig well, he'll be
Okay.
full of ideas.
Yeah.
We share a name, but no relation, so,
I was wondering.
Yeah, you should claim it.
Okay.
yeah. So, okay. Well, great, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, so I've asked once, is there anybody else who would like to speak? I guess not. Do we have any thoughts about this? We've had now a month's time for people to write in and express their views. I thought we got a very nice synopsis of some of the comments that came in. By way of public disclosure, I turned in my Stanley Anderson database records for the work that my dad's firm did on the property. So up through the, probably early 1960s, this was what was considered a house account for the Stanley Anderson firm. And every time the Olmsteds wanted to revamp something in the house, they'd pick up Stanley Anderson, and one of the guys would come out and measure something up. They built the tennis courts that's there. They built a lot of fences, and a great deal of the steel jetty that's there, and a lot of the groin work that I don't know if it's still there or not, but they did a lot of work down on the beachfront. But that work stopped in the 1960s when the property changed hands.
Yeah.
By further way of disclosure, I also went to high school with the Eck kids, and although I wasn't on the property at that time, was well aware that they were all down there pouring concrete and hauling rock and doing all of the stuff that 18-year-old kids like to do and stuff.
It was very, really, really interesting letter from the Eck family with pictures that was sent in, and those are really helpful for the Bluff restoration to see what's under there now for AECom. So that it was interesting to hear that personal perspective, but also to see all of the.
That's still intact.
So all of that's still there. It's the kind of surface layer of vegetation that's starting to slough some, and so you need to.
Eat into
Yeah.
the mortar.
Yeah, and I think AECom needs to see if the kind of really strong teenage work is a 100-year project or a 50-year project. Yeah.
He believed it was.
Yeah.
If any of the survey work that I have in my records would be valuable, I think I have a 1946 topographical drawing of the bluff.
Okay.
So call me.
Thank you.
Just call
Okay.
me, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments, any other great thoughts about this?
Chairman?
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say, while I'm certainly saddened about the building being demolished, the one thing that I am heartened about is that it's really being the development of the new home and the restoration of the property and the demolition is being driven by an environmental consciousness. I think that's wonderful, that you are really being careful to use the slate roof and the iron windows and those beautiful French doors inside, and possibly using the great room, and taking months to piece by piece dismantle the home so that it can be reused somewhere else. So I really applaud the family for doing that and for that being the driving force for removing the home and reusing the home in ways that you possibly can. So in some ways, it'll always live on, right?
Yeah, it's that has been really a driver for the Aherns from the beginning.
I have to say, after our last meeting, the UN climate conference was just ending. And it just really struck me that we need to all be kind of thinking in how can we be more environmentally conscious, and you clearly are doing that. So again, thank you and good luck with all of that.
Thank you.
Other comments? Jeff, do you have any comments?
Well, I went through the house, and I think I had probably the same reaction of everybody else. The facades, the brick's very nice, but it's daunting to be in there, especially just for the first time. And so, I understand, and we've talked. I think important for me is what's the best option here. And the Aherns seem to be good stewards of property in Lake Bluff and interested in the lot itself, which is really the the selling point to that area. And so, that's kind of where I landed on the thing. You know, I personally, would love to see put the great room out there. I mean, I think that would be, that would be kind of like a no-brainer for me, because then you could point and say, there's that historic thing. And I know you're not gonna commit to that, but that's my comment.
All right. Janie, any comments?
Well, my feelings have not changed since last month, when I thought that it's a structure that has outlived its useful life, and I would like to see it landmarked, and then I think we should let the Aherns proceed with plans.
Margaret, any thoughts?
My two have not changed. I feel like they are celebrating the surroundings of the property, the lake, the bluff. Our name is Lake Bluff.
Yep.
They have been very thoughtful in what they want to do. I think to subdivide that property would be sad. They would, you know, that would certainly not be historical. I think that they're making a long-term investment in that property, which is not insignificant. And that takes a special person and couple to be willing to do that. And, you know, longtime residents, I think we should celebrate their plans and welcome them and do whatever we can to expedite their dream. So,
One last question, Glenn, maybe this is aimed at you. If we take those two lots, what could a developer cut those into?
Yeah, that's just a sticky question to answer, really. So by operation of the zoning code, you really can't do anything there without seeking variations, right? You don't have enough frontage at the public street. So even to do what the Aherns are proposing, again, really due to the lot, not due to the historic nature of what's going on here, sooner or later they'll need to come through the plan commission and take zoning relief. So to some extent, a literal answer to your question is zero.
Wow.
I mean, in practice, you know, 7 acres, you know, 7 houses would be consistent with other developments in this area, anywhere from 4 to 7.
Okay. So 4 to 7 houses on that lot.
Again, that all requires zoning relief and showing a hardship, and there's a lot to get there. But if you look, you know, to the north, you can find, you know, generally speaking, acre to acre and a half lots in that area.
Yeah, if you go to the property just north of there, the Lansdowne property, that all went into what, acre and a half lots?
I'm going to check myself right
You
now.
know,
but I believe
actually,
so.
it's just an academic question at this point, so. Okay, so I think we have a sense of what we'd like to do. Actually, rather than look up the size of the lots, Glenn, can you tell us again, what are our options here?
Certainly. So you can end the review tonight. You can choose to continue that review, but again, understand that unless you call a special meeting, that will expire before your next meeting. You can ask the village board to issue a 30-day extension. I'll note as I'm talking through this that I guess that can't, I'm not sure that can be acted on before the delay expires either. We'd have to review that a little bit if that was your choice, but we can, if you make that motion, we'll try to find a way to give that effect. And then, again, you can direct us by motion to prepare and file in the name of the commission this landmark nomination.
If we're going to terminate this, what's the simplest way to do that? Or if we're not going to take any further action, we just simply decline to vote this evening?
we make the motion to terminate, don't we?
Well,
That
we
first
can do
one.
either.
Either one would have the same outcome. Again, you could terminate it tonight. You could allow it to continue to tick through these last few weeks to January, I believe that's January 4th.
Okay. So we're sort of faced with a this is or that's is. Do we want to vote to terminate? Or we can just simply not take any action and we end up at the same outcome.
Except it's more expeditious
Yeah, they
Is
have
it not
3
to
more
do it?
weeks.
now.
It doesn't change the time clock at all. So what would you like to do?
I
So-
just, in interest of cooperation, I would like to see us terminate the review this evening.
Are you going to make that motion?
Certainly will. I will move to terminate the demolition review of 1 Moffett Road as the single-family residence does not meet the criteria for designation.
Chairman, so can we just, I don't want to step on you.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead, make them,
It does actually meet the criteria for designation, so can we just leave that latter part off?
can we just move the period up, is what you're asking?
Yes.
Would you like to restate the motion?
Or Janie can.
I can amend it.
Okay.
I will just leave that part off. So I will make a new motion to terminate the demolition review of 1 Moffett Road as a single family. Just to, okay,
One Moffett
start over again. I need to put it at the end of 1 Moffett Road, Rhett.
There we go.
Okay. All right. Third time's the charm. I move to terminate the demolition review of 1 Moffett Road.
I second.
We have a second? Okay. Shall we take a roll call vote?
Certainly. Member McGuire,
Yes.
Member Nickel,
Yes.
Member Church,
Yes.
Member Minor,
Yes.
Chair Bergman.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Well, there we are. Okay. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for all of the information that you've provided. And if I have other information that I could provide, call me.
Yeah,
I want
yes.
to thank you for going through the process. I'd like to thank the Aherns for being here this evening, and and your construction crew, your staff that's here also. So
Thank you for your
It's,
thoughtfulness.
it's all time and.
Enjoy the process.
Okay.
The
So-
end result.
So, and enjoy the holidays.
Yes, you too. Thank you so much.
I will-
Chairman Bergman,
I will-
can we address the landmark nomination? Or does that have to wait
The landmark nomination,
for 1 Moffett Road?
well, we've terminated the review,
But we cannot landmark it?
so we're not going to landmark it.
We are not.
No,
I see, the landmarking.
we just finished that.
Right. Haven't we done that before, landmarked something and then?
Good night.
Thank you.
See ya. All right. In the past, we have landmarked properties. So if you go up the line of all of the estates, if you go further north, forgotten where the Cerny house was, and forgotten the name of the street. It's the street north of the ravine. We landmarked the property. We had very much the same situation with a big piece of land right on the lakefront and right on a ravine. We landmarked the property, they waited out the clock, and then went and tore down the building. So they waited the 4 months. So we, in effect, asked them to go ahead and tear down a landmarked building. We went
Okay.
through a different scenario this evening by declining to landmark the property. We were then able to terminate the landmark review. And so then they've gone forward now, they're off to
Oh, I see, okay.
go do that. So rather than landmark the property and make them go through the effort of waiting the 4 months, we have just simply declined and allowed it to go forward.
Right, I understand now. I thought that we could do,
So I would
I
have,
thought we could do that.
Posthumously.
as a true preservationist, I would have preferred to landmark the property. But there's not the votes here this evening to do that, so we just go ahead and say goodbye.
Okay,
And hope like crazy that they're gonna reutilize all the materials and whatnot, so.
Well,
I think they're
And that's-
sincere about trying, don't you?
exactly, and that costs money. And so if we delay them, that's ticking away at that budget. So I think
Yes.
by
Well,
being,
it takes 6 months to a year to design a house of this standard, of this
Yeah.
quality.
Yeah, they just
So,
have
you know,
the
it's
outline
just-
right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think of this, the landmark statute in Lake Bluff, I view as being an administrative delay rather than a punitive stop the tear down delay. In other towns where it's a year long, in some towns you can parlay that into 2 years. Now you're talking about, as you're trying to point out, you can significantly delay the process. But it takes a while to design a 6,000 square foot house.
It also takes a long time to deconstruct one and start doing other things, so,
Yeah,
you know.
so.
It's not my budget, it's theirs,
Right.
but I think they're grateful, I would suspect.
All right. Well, good. The next thing we have on our agenda is the proposed meeting dates. Do we vote in the meeting dates, or do we acknowledge them? Mr. Cole, what do we do with this?
Yes, there's a sample motion there in the packet. In short, we publish these really for your reference, and also because we do make some adjustments to each body's meeting schedule just to meet certain civil and religious holidays. If you approve of these, if these work for you with the few, in your case, in the case of the commission, just one deviation in April, if you approve of those, we just ask you to signify that by a motion and a voice vote. And I'll put these up on the screen for your ease of reference.
Is it still
Managed to-
consistent with
I managed to misplace my sheet on that, but,
Yeah, it's,
the second Wednesday?
yeah, second Wednesday of each month at 7 PM. The only exception is in April. I believe that's a Jewish holiday, would fall on that Wednesday typically. And so we've proposed to move it back a little bit to the third Monday the 17th.
okay. So, any questions, any thoughts? Okay. So, do we propose this on a motion, or do we just make a voice vote to accept it?
Still a motion and a second. It would just be to adopt the HPC's proposed regular meeting dates.
So, anybody would like to make a motion?
Sure, I will move to adopt the 2023 meetings notice calendar.
And a second?
Second.
And a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Any objections? Hearing none, we have a calendar. Okay, so, commissioner report, I don't have much to report for the commission. Anybody else have anything they want to report? We have ordinance recommendations in front of the PCZBA that are under consideration, so they're still talking about that, and we're gonna be working on that, I would assume, in January and probably into February, and maybe you can address that in a moment. But I don't have much beyond that, other than wanting to, once again, welcome Jeff McGuire to our board. So, that's sort of my comments at this point. Do you have any would you like to add from a staff report standpoint?
Certainly, just a small handful of items. So as Chair Bergman said, your policy recommendations have been working their way through different village bodies. The village board approved some of those Monday night, so there's now a full waiver of building permit fees for landmark properties. That tax rebate program is now on the books, so if you're an owner occupant in a newly designated landmark, you can get a rebate back on your property taxes for a number of years. Some zoning issues are still being worked out by the PCZBA. I expect that'll probably be a January and February type of task for that group. We're still finishing up and pushing out some communications here at the end of the year. That includes Lake Bluff Online. That includes a folio of the village's existing landmarks and some flavor and history of each, and as well as just a whole host of new forums for this property tax program and for other parts of your new ordinance, and trying to make sure we talk about these incentives along the way. In the world of past recommendations by this body, the Maple Avenue landmark, I believe that's 618 Maple Avenue, they were due for a zoning hearing tomorrow. They actually have elected to withdraw both their zoning and landmark application at this time. So can't be acted on by the village board now. Still haven't had a chance to connect with them and get some more information on the reasoning behind that.
I mean, they're right behind me, so I thought the house was landmarked, that already went through. I'm wrong on that.
It had a positive recommendation, and it was
It's almost there.
yeah, it was withdrawn on Friday, and Monday was going to be when it would be finalized.
But I had asked them to be cognizant of these changes as they were coming together to make sure that they got the syncopation of their landmarking. I wanted the landmarking to come after the changes had been adopted
Yes.
for the zoning and for the building permit fees issues. I didn't want them to wake up and say, gee, I could have had a V8. I didn't want them to be behind the, and just simply, it's just simply on a timing issue, so.
So
I have to hope that that's what they're doing, so.
I would hope so, yeah.
Because I know that they presented a beautiful presentation for their house, very nicely done,
yes,
so,
the garage was beautiful.
yeah.
She knows it. She's good.
So we'll have to see, okay. Do we have anything else to discuss this evening?
Can I just ask about Lake Bluff on the?
Sure.
You said you were gonna announce it, so has it been tested? Are you feeling good about it? Is it ready to go? At least
There's
as a
really,
soft launch?
yeah, the soft launch is going to happen. There's really been two minor hiccups. One has just been, we're hoping to release this landmark property list, kind of ties into it. And our friends at the museum wanted to take a closer look at a few of those for accuracy issues. It's a volunteer group, and we're still working to nail that down. The second part is, of course, this is actually the third time this has happened with this project, is the state of Illinois has changed how they host all of their National Register data again, which actually breaks a few parts of that again. I think we're just going to launch without that if needed and put it back in, but that's how it happens. For those who don't know, you probably wouldn't know, but that office has moved around within the state's hierarchy. I think it's technically under like the Department of Natural Resources now, which these are social resources. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me, but makes sense in some extent as, these people, this office controls, for example, I think some of the, minor state historic sites directly and so on, but they're having to move some resources around as well.
So who will the soft lunch be for?
What we had talked about with this group was the village advisory bodies and the real estate community.
Okay.
I think that still makes sense as a
True.
course of action.
Now, will the public have easy access to this?
Yeah, well, we can,
If the intellectually curious resident wants to go down the rabbit hole of this, it's a really cool thing to get into.
Yeah. Did such an amazing job.
thank you. So we're happy to take your feedback on how to do this. We can let this wait a few weeks with that group in case there's any comments, or we can start putting it on the village website and so on and so on.
I will let you take the soft launch and carry it, and perhaps beta test it with the real estate community, and then perhaps open it up to the public. That might be, given the fact that the software tends to bounce around a little bit, I would think that might be the better course.
Okay.
So,
Chairman, once we have the carrots all approved by the different advisory boards and the village board, how will we launch that to the community? Will we be talking about that more here?
probably so, yes.
Because I think that'll be important to
In
get
the
it out.
past, we've done a whole series of, over the last 15 years or so, we've done a whole series of different kinds of marketing efforts. And in some cases, we've actually written to the homeowners. We have the top 25 homes that we have sort of publicly announced. And we might put together a program where we send them a formal letter and ask them to come and meet with us in a large public meeting, which we did in the past. We had a couple of speakers come and speak at that point. Susan Benjamin came and spoke about the technical aspects of landmarking. We had a real estate attorney come and talk about some of the easement issues and things like that. So that was kind of a, sort of a formal techie, it was a public meeting, but it was kind of a techie meeting.
Kind of targeted.
But very targeted. Other times, we have sent them invitation letters and asked them, please come and talk to us through the village, sort of on a one-on-one basis,
Yeah, I
to
like
talk
that.
about some of the options. So there's a couple of things we can think about, what we want to do. And we've also published a paper handout brochure that we've had in the past, which listed the landmarks sort of on one page and then listed the attributes on the other page. That might be a fun thing to have in the Realtor's desk drawer. That might be that kind of thing that they're able to hand out on our behalf or something. So there's a handful of things that we can talk about. And to the extent that you guys have any marketing skill thoughts, you know, let's, you know, we're happy to look at them and stuff.
That's her deal.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a number of things we can do. I'm
We'll be
heartened,
talking once they get approved.
yeah, I'm heartened by the fact that for the last 3 meetings, we've had a new property to landmark every time we've come. And so,
Initiated by the homeowner or the property owner?
initiated by the homeowner, right, and a great deal of interest. There appears to be a nice buzz going on in town about some of the carrots, as you describe them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a really neat position to be in, to say we're looking at preservation from a positive encouragement standpoint now. There's a lot of benefits to be had. So, you know, the building permit fees, that's, you know, that's probably the value of, you know, a couple of new windows in your house, or, you know, I mean, if you want to make that kind of equivalency. So I think there's some neat things there. So, and I'm hoping that into the spring, we're going to see more landmarks coming our way.
Can I ask, Glenn, is the tax rebate, is that something new, or is that the state?
There's a state program, and so folks in Lake Bluff have been able to access that for some time, probably since 2006, 2008. This is a local rebate.
Okay.
And this would kick in really just based on landmark designation.
Okay.
The state program requires a minimum investment based on the value of the house. Your plans have to go to Springfield to be approved. A couple other things. This program is shorter and not as much dollars, but you can access it really just by consenting to be landmarked and then by being landmarked by this body.
Okay, thanks. Because we went through the state thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I was asking my wife, how did we find out about that? She called you because the house was landmarked to ask what we could do, and then you told her about that. We had no idea about that tax thing at all, so.
I don't
She
remember
gives you
that
credit for
conversation
it,
so
so
well
anyways.
either, so you're welcome.
So this local one's I think is very interesting.
Well, it also gets the village standing firmly behind the idea of preservation. And when
Yeah,
the village,
that says something.
when the village votes with its pocketbook, then you're like, okay, you know, they're on board, and we have to, Drew is here this evening, we have to thank him for his support and whatnot, so it's been part of a good process. It's really part of the fun of being on this commission, so.
You know, this is actually coming back to me a little bit. I think your project had to come back through here a second time because the state wanted to change your
They didn't like
window or something like that,
the door
right?
that you
door.
moved
It
around.
was that's why we have that two-door thing there.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm a finance guy, so it felt like an auditor who they're done, but they come up with one thing just because they have to. And seriously, and they said, well, you want to change the entrance, even though where we put the entrance was a blank on a window. And they said, but you got to keep the original entrance. And we said, as a door? No, not necessarily. It just has to look, so it's not an operating door, but, so that was the last thing they said. Really, that was the only thing they really pushed us on, except interior doors. They didn't like us. They said if you want to put new doors in, they can't be 6-panel. They had to be something else. So we changed ours to all the 5-panel
On the interior?
on the interior.
I thought they were just interested in the exterior.
That's a comment she made.
They take a look at once you get into the construction process, they take a look at the construction materials, and do they meet standards? So,
There were certain things that we thought were old, and she, to the woman, I'll say what she said, she goes, we had something, I forget, some kind of fancy woodwork, and she goes, told my wife, no, that somebody just tarted up your house or something. That's what she said. My wife spent a lot of time. So anyways, but thank you, Glenn. You get a lot of credit for that, from my wife and myself, so.
yeah.
Quite welcome.
So do we have anything else in front of us this evening?
Well, just going back to the Lake Bluff Online, could we time box the amount of time that the soft launch happens so you can just turn it on for, like, at least have a target date to turn it on?
Yeah, my target date, we're gonna have to, I'm sure, advertise it more than once, but
Yeah.
I've told our esteemed village administrator that'll be done before the end of the year, which is, 17 days from today. 16.
It doesn't have to be perfect. Yeah, exactly.
That's my direction.
What are the
Even
odds
if
of
it's
that-
done
that
or
I
not.
would rate those odds pretty high.
Done. Yeah. It'll just get better with all the feedback. Yeah.
It's always going to be a process, right?
Yeah.
Always,
Always thinking.
yeah.
All right, so, the last, okay, one more
I
comment?
did have one more thing I wanted to raise to the group's attention, and you formally want to give us a little bit of direction on this tonight. So in talking about the 24 East Scranton project this week, this is actually the first commercial landmark in the village, which means that changes for that particular property right now would need to make a number of stops. They would have to come to your body, they would have to go to the Architectural Board of Review. Many changes would also have to go to the Plan Commission. Many of those would all have to go to the village board, and you're compounding now. We probably need to take a closer look at that topic in general now that we have one. But certainly one issue we identified for sure is signage. Signage would have to take 2 stops now instead of 1. And the bigger problem is there's some legal considerations around regulating signage from the Supreme Court's view over the last 5 to 10 years.
So those guys.
That we, need to look more closely at. We didn't get to identify this and call it out in a memo to you, but at least for signage, certainly, you may not want to review those changes for this building. You may want to exempt those from having to come through your landmark review process, or really, delegate that to the ABR. There's a bunch of ways to do it, but
Okay.
something to think about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if he, Lake Effects Architects wanted to make changes internally in the building, they would be eligible for these carrots. Is that correct?
They'd get the building permit fee waiver. The tax credit, the way it was structured, was just, you need to be an owner occupant.
Okay.
But, if you're doing a tenant finish or a remodel, it might not be a house will get remodeled every 10, 20 years, what have you.
Sure.
It'd be a relatively big dollar amount. For them, they're gonna see a smaller dollar amount. That'll happen every time tenants change, for example, this is the 3rd build out of that front space.
Right.
In the 6 years that I've been with the village.
Sure.
And so that's.
It's vacant now, right?
Well, it's Hanson.
Hanson
Hanson is
Hanson
going
moving
Moving
up
up front,
within a week or 2, probably.
Okay.
so
So
you can
it-
rent the back of it now, because that's available.
But
Or
if
the upstairs.
But if someone went through it 3 times in 8 years, they would be eligible each time as long as.
They'll keep getting the waiver, yeah.
Okay.
So small projects, big projects, they'll keep getting the building permit fee waiver.
Okay.
Again, they can't get the property tax piece of it.
Okay.
So is there an issue with signage for Hansel coming up?
Hans's was already approved, and this will be, it'll take until the landmark nomination is done before it's an actual issue, but it's just something we know will be coming, and wanted to prompt you guys to start thinking about.
Makes sense.
So last piece of business, I need someone to make a motion to adjourn.
I moved to adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
8:27, and we are adjourned. Thank you.